when you're calling on surveys, what have you done that has helped you to be successful, specifically with phoning?
I think to be successful, for one thing, you can't be afraid to let them know who you are and that you are from their area. Many of them do not like the soliciting from people that comes from out of state. And if they know that you're from their area and you are also involved in agriculture, it helps a great deal. I know, having my husband been a lifelong resident of Newcastle, it helped me get in the door the first time or two when I talk to people. And that's very important. They feel more comfortable with you. And then on the other hand, if they know you too well, they may not want to share some of their personal information with you. And so you have to weigh the two of those as to which people would be better at that and which not.
For those operators that are unknown to me, I do various things on my own time. I will pull up an aerial shot of their farm, and this will give me some idea as to what is in the farm, making the conversation go better. If time, and on my own time, I will just type in their name and city on the internet. This will give me some additional information, maybe. Obituaries pop up, family members. Basically, I get to know them before I make a phone call. I do not read every detail on the internet. I maybe spend a minute or so on each one.
And I tell them, you know, when you tell them that you're with NASTA, a lot of these farmers have no clue what NASTA is. You know, you got to let them know what NASTA is, and you also got to tell them it's a branch off the USDA. That's what I tell them, and they know immediately what USDA is. But 90% of them don't know what NASTA is. So when you're calling them and you're saying, hey, I'm from NASTA, that doesn't, you know, they can't relate to that. So if you always tell them, hey, you know what it is, or I'm a branch off the USDA, I think that helps as well.
And I try to just always be really friendly, be really courteous. And if it looks like they're busy, I do not bother them. Or if they say they're busy, I take them at the word on the phone. I don't pester them till they tell me it's okay to call back. I am very persistent about calling back because sometimes people get busy and they forget. But you got to be persistent and friendly and courteous all at the same time. And sometimes that's kind of a balancing act.
If you're looking for a silver bullet, there is not one. Every farmer is unique in their situation. The biggest thing I think you need to do is call when it's convenient for the farmer, not always when it's convenient for you. And of course, always know your material, always be ready to answer any questions the farmer does have, and be available. Like I said, if they say call me at 6 a.m. in the morning, you call them at 6 a.m. A snowstorm is a great time to call. They're at home, they're in the house, they're more willing to do it. Unless they're Kevin, then everything's thrown out the window. So you've got to be able to adapt to your farmer.
When working on ARMS 3, what have you done that has helped you be successful?
Be prepared to start work at the beginning of the survey, especially with the ARMS 3, because of the fact by the time the due date's coming around, operators are in the field and they're not going to have the time to talk to us.
I'm a real personable person. So when it's hard to do these on the phone. It's more challenging because you can't look them in the eye, you can't shake their hand, you can't tell them about yourself. And I always try to call them by their first name with a Mr. and Mrs. in front of it. It makes it more personal. You know, you call them by their last name. Sometimes it makes it more business-like. And, you know, I like to get down with a personal basis for each of these farmers. And it helps a lot because I grew up on a farm and my dad was a farmer. So I kind of know the lingo and I can kind of read them pretty well. So I don't try to make it so formal.
Well, typical of any survey, but certainly with ARMS 3. ARMS 3 takes a lot of time compared to a cattle survey, some livestock survey, or crop survey. And don't try to fool anybody as to the fact that it's going to take time. But do make sure they understand, if time is a consideration that they've made known, that you don't have to do this all in one sitting, that you can come back and forth, get in and out of the survey. And when they ask the question, how much time is it going to take? You say something like, it all depends on your access to records and your ability to respond to the questions. That may be anywhere, probably from, I was involved with a CPA in their office, in front of their computer. She was clicking off answers like quickly, and it still took an hour. On the other hand, I think of the older operator kept things in a shoebox. He knew it was in that shoebox or multiple shoeboxes somewhere, but he had to take time to find them. And that took probably in the area of a half a day to get through that. And you do that without forfeiting quality. You remind them that you're taking the time to act on their behalf, to best represent themselves and yourself in agriculture.
If you can get them to talk and you can develop a little conversation with them, usually you can somehow get them to finish it either then or at a later time. That's really about all I do. And I know the survey, I know what the results are. You can instantly answer a question. You don't have to fumble around to say, well, let me check and see what that particular thing is. You just answer them, and you do it truthfully and to the best of your ability.
Ranchers will be up and out early, so sometimes it's better to wait till 10:30 after they've been out and fed the animals, and then come back in maybe for a cup of coffee or to warm up. Crop growers, they tend to don't get out into the fields until the sun comes up, so the earlier the better sometimes. I don't like to say call before 8 o'clock, but a lot of times 7:30 is a good time. The second thing I'd like to point out is these people love their farms and their families. So if you show an interest in their operation, if they have a collection of old implements, ask them about it. If they're doing some new construction or you see a well rig, ask them about that. The more interest you show in their actual operation, the more they'll open up to you.
The most challenging thing about ARMS 3 is, of course, getting them to give you that personal information, how much they sold their crop for, what their expenses were. One thing I recommend that you never do is never assume the questions they don't want to answer. Don't go into the expensive section going, I know you don't really want to answer these, but another thing I do to help get my foot in the door, which doesn't really pertain, is I always explain to them, if there's a question that they are truly adverse to answering, that we can skip that question and move on to the next one. I was doing an ARMS report with a gentleman standing in his front yard. He was working on his tractor the whole time we were talking, and he answered everything but one question. And the question he refused was, how many strawberries did they use in their household? He answered all the monetary questions, didn't bat an eye, but it was none of our darn business how many strawberries they used in their household. So you just never know what question they are going to refuse. So you never want to leave them. And it's, oh yeah, I would have answered that, but she said I didn't have to, or he said.
And something I learned is you had better memorize. Yeah, I said that ugly word. Memorize the surveys. So when you are talking with people and you're being quiet and listening, they might be answering the questions on page 6 and 15 and 30. The only way you'll know that is if you memorize it. And it's important to try not to ask the same question over again. That is not only irritating for them, that's irritating for us too. So I learned to memorize, and I learned to take notes like crazy while I was listening. And when you're doing it on the phone, you need to listen even more carefully, because sometimes they've also pretty well memorized what's on that survey, and they just start rattling off all the information, and you better write as fast as you can.
When I leave from a long survey, I always ask my farm operator if I have any questions after I go home and go through this form, can I call you back? That way it's not a surprise to him. He knows I might be calling him back, and if I don't, I didn't have any questions. It was all good information.
The best thing to do is read it over, and if there's things that don't pertain to them, why don't ask them? Like if they've like leasing, and if they own their land, why you don't have to ask them some of those questions. Sometimes they just don't know. But a lot of times, like with the household stuff, like on Arms 3, the husbands really don't know a whole lot about how much it costs for groceries. You got to almost have to find out from their wife. Lots of times that turns out to be pretty good if they're there too.
Knowing the questionnaire is the most important. I start circling some of the questions that would be pertinent to that operation so that I do not miss something of importance. Just in case they all of a sudden get in a rush, then I can move quickly through the form.
Well, accounts receivable is a situation that you have to jog their memory again from a few pages back of what they got paid for that year and what they're still owed. And sometimes it confuses the operator. I just ask them, okay, did you get paid for this year's crops? And if they say no, I say, okay, then we'll be putting that on the next year. What did they pay you for the crops that you did last year? And they tell me that. And so therefore, I know what they owe, what there's owed to them, and what they have already received.
In the past, we've had you call back producers who have mailed in their form and it just wasn't quite complete. How did you convince them to give you the information for those sections that at the beginning they weren't willing to maybe answer when they mailed it in?
Yeah, and I've had that happen. It's amazing if you can get them on the phone and call them back. It's surprising how agreeable they will be. You just have to tell them this is benefiting you, and then explain it briefly, whatever that area may be, why it helps them, and if they would just help me with these last couple of things, that's it. It's done, and we thank you for your time. And if it's something you do not know or can't answer, that's fine, but let me go ahead and ask these. And usually they will, but they might complain and everything else. But I don't have any problem with that. They usually just say, oh, doggone it, I suppose I did that anyway, and they'll just do it. So,
what will be your pitch for Arms 3?
I use a couple different pitches. One of them is that this is your chance to advocate for the farmer. This is your chance to get your story told. And the other thing I like to mention is that, 100 years ago, there were a lot of farmers in Congress and the Senate. There are not anymore. They may own farm ground, but most of them are not actually farming. So we need your information so that when they bring numbers to the farm bill, they're accurate numbers, because we're getting the information from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Explain the various uses of the data from the Arms 3 and how it benefits farmers. So often farmers will say, well, surveys don't help me, they only hurt me. And one detail that has helped me is telling them how the Arms directly benefits farmers through the government policies, such as the Farm Bill, plus the fact that it is used to provide the farm sector portion of the national gross domestic product. And if you can get them thinking about some personal way it's going to help them, then they're more cooperative, I've found.
I don't like reading a script when I make a phone call. It makes me feel like I'm more of a telemarketer than I'm actually someone interested in their farming operations. Understand that you can use your own words, and I try to use my own words as much as I possibly can. It's basically what I try to convey. I want a little humor there. I want them to understand that I actually am a human being and not a salesman. And hopefully, they listen to it. I don't try to make this script or these initial calls very long. As I found myself, I won't listen to a message much over a minute long.
Folks are far more likely to respond to the word report than survey. Survey's gotten a bad connotation in this day and age. So I need your help with the Ag Resource Management Report. You've been chosen to help us with this. And I'm calling on you because by that time, they're saying, oh, I got the thing in the mail and it's going to take so long. I'm not calling to do it right now. I'm calling to set an appointment with you. The next part of what I say is crucial. I give choices. I never ask a yes or no question. It is always open-ended. I have time on Monday or Tuesday, which works for you. And they'll tell me. Then I say, does morning, afternoon, or evening work best for you? And they'll tell me. And then I say, does 7:30 in the evening work better or 8 o'clock in the evening if they told me in the PM? And they will tell me. Then I write that time down. If I'm on the phone, I reiterate it. And I ask for a cell phone number in any instance, and I let them know. I will send them a text to remind them of the appointment. And of course, I do remind them. If I'm in person, I give them my business card with the date and time written on it. I also include in both instances what they need, like their financials for Arms 3, which is their books, and their Schedule F. Those are the most important things.
Make the farmer feel special. Make them feel that they are valued. Tell them how important they are for their region. There's only a few selected from their area, and how important they are. I mean, they need to feel special.
When conducting in-person interviews, what is something unique you have done that has made you successful?
And the other tip I want to bring is always carry a clipboard. This has saved me from being bit by a dog I don't know how many times.
Do not go into a house with a binder and a bunch of other paraphernalia, usually just the survey, so that the look is not overwhelming.
When you go to see somebody in person, keep in mind that they are agriculture people. You might be used to working in an office setting and having to be somewhat less than casual, but when you go see a rancher, they're going to be in denim, and they a lot of times expect you to do the same. If you show up, well, for instance, as a woman, if I would show up with a lot of jewelry or a lot of makeup or anything like that, they would think, "Woo, who does she think she is?" And you need to make them comfortable, make them know that you're a rancher too. Put your hand out, shake their hand, and use a good grip if you can. I know some people aren't as strong with their hands, but a good grip means a lot to a rancher.
We need to have our ID with us and a business card and the door hangers, because if they're not home, you can leave that on their door. And I found often they'll return the call, whereas it saves me going back and forth or calling them and getting the answering machine continuously. And I'm not sure it's unique, but sometimes I have gone to a farmer and I've noticed something really unique. It might be a beautiful garden. It might be an old barn that's unique. And I've talked to the operator about that. And I found this helps break the ice.
I've done everything to get people to do the survey. One place, as we're driving up, we could see I had another enumerator with me. So we could see on one side of the road where the area was heavily overgrazed, the other side of the road, the fields were not. And as we got closer and closer, we had no idea where we were going. We could see snowstorms blowing in this valley. And we got there and nobody would answer the door. So we heard some equipment running. So we went out to the farmyard, found them trying to load a cow. And these guys didn't know a lot about how to load a cow. They were trying to build a ramp to get the cow into a trailer with a backhoe. And the guy's like, well, we can't go in the house. He kept giving us all these excuses why he couldn't do the survey. So I just started asking him, well, how many acres do you own? And Mary was with me. Mary started writing everything down in the survey. And I just went through it because I knew the survey well enough that I could just start asking all the questions off the top of the head. And after about 15 minutes, he said, oh, are we doing the survey? I was like, yep. I wasn't going to drive another 3 or 4 hours to set up another appointment with him. So we got it done. He was great to do it with, but he never left the corral and he never got that cow loaded.
I honestly recommend that when you're practicing at home, you read the form out loud because it sounds different when you read it out loud.
I always tell them, if you have any problems with a survey or a certain question on a survey, tell us that, because we need to know what's going on with the surveys. And if they feel like they got a little bit more input on what we're asking, sometimes that helps.
I just go out and do the best job you know how to do. Have integrity, do the best job you can possibly do. Start early. Every survey that you're going to do, know the survey, read the material prior to the training sessions, call the supervisors, talk to us. We're here to help every enumerator, and we as supervisors help each other. So communication is a wonderful thing. It's what we have to use and what we have to do. Don't forget that. And then this isn't drudgery. This isn't digging ditches. I worked 5 years in the oil field too, and along with I've worked very hard at different things. You don't very often work up too much of a sweat in this job, so it's a fairly easy job. It's neck up, I always tell people, and not neck down. So do the best you can and have fun with it.